Happy Wednesday, everyone. Well, not if you're Whoopi Goldberg, AKA Karen Johnson. Yeah, who knew Whoopi was a Karen? I thought that was only for white people, like Toyota Priuses and skiing. Roll it, Francis.
Good morning and welcome to The View. You all saw the news. Whoopi will be back here in 2 weeks. Okay?
So cute when one of their side gets punished. They sulk like they ran out of raw cookie dough in the green room.
No one could have seen it coming. Whoopi Goldberg, live on air, unraveling in front of millions. The moment was so intense, it felt more like a soap opera finale than a daytime talk show. What triggered this emotional storm? None other than Fox's sharp-tongued commentator, Greg Gutfeld. He didn't hold back, and the fallout was immediate and brutal. The show started off like any other episode of The View. Spirited opinions, laughter, and a little tension. But once Gutfeld entered the conversation, the mood shifted like thunder rolling in. His words weren't just criticisms, they were calculated blows, and each one landed with stunning accuracy. Whoopi tried to brush it off, but the damage was already done. As the panel tried to maintain their rhythm, Whoopi's usually fierce confidence started to shake. Her responses came slower, her tone grew heavier, and the tension in the room skyrocketed. The audience, stunned into silence, could feel something historic happening. Gutfeld didn't yell, he didn't curse. He just calmly laid out a case that sliced right through the emotional noise. When he mentioned her past comments about sensitive historical topics, the temperature dropped.
Ran down the hallway.
The rapture is here.
Rapture's here. And then also I learned that cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
Cicadas.
Although I love
for the first time in
Cicadas
like
cicada.
No.
100 years,
No.
for the first time in many, many years.
No,
And so-
every 17 years this happens.
well, that's not what I read, but maybe, maybe you know better. All those things together would maybe lead one to believe that, either climate change exists
That's one
or
of the
something
points.
is really
Except
going
it's
on.
returning.
Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground. It can't.
It happens, and the eclipse, they've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen, and they actually can say when these things are going to happen.
Whoopi's expression froze as if she was hit by an unexpected gust of reality. She tried to defend herself, saying, No, that's not what I meant. But the words didn't land. The more she spoke, the more she seemed to spiral. It was a moment unlike any other on The View. One of its most seasoned hosts suddenly looked cornered, outmatched, and emotionally overwhelmed. Gutfeld stood his ground, delivering punch after punch. Metaphorically, of course, he brought facts, wit, and just enough smugness to shake the entire set. Whoopi, who often commands the stage with force, now appeared shaken. Her voice trembled as she tried to redirect the conversation, but the spotlight had already turned too hot. Viewers at home watched in disbelief as Whoopi's defenses collapsed on live TV. Social media exploded, with reactions ranging from support to total disbelief. "She's falling apart," one user tweeted. "This is worse than anything I've seen from her on the show before." Even her co-hosts were visibly stunned. Some tried to jump in and save her, but Gutfeld had already taken control of the moment. "This isn't about you, Whoopi," he said sharply. "It's about the facts, and sometimes those facts are uncomfortable." That line alone sent shockwaves through the studio. Whoopi looked like she had just been slapped with cold water. With each second that passed, she grew more flustered. Her usual calm and command were slipping through her fingers like sand.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about
maybe
race.
ethnicity.
No,
Consider
it's
Jews
about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about
What
race.
is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah, that's heroically stupid. Even for The View.
At one point, she even paused mid-sentence, stared into the camera and sighed. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or cringe. Meanwhile, Gutfeld leaned back in his seat, satisfied and unbothered. His mission was clear: call out the hypocrisy and walk away unshaken. By the time the segment ended, Whoopi looked exhausted, like someone who had just survived a verbal hurricane. But the storm wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. Backstage, whispers filled the studio as producers scrambled to regain control. But the damage was done. Whoopi's emotional unraveling had become the headline of the day. Clips from the segment spread online like wildfire. Within minutes, hashtags like Watch Whoopi Meltdown and Gutfeld Downs The View started trending across multiple platforms. People couldn't stop watching the moment Whoopi lost her composure. Viewers rewound the footage again and again, stunned at just how quickly the situation went downhill. The contrast was striking. Gutfeld, composed and clever, versus Whoopi, flustered and defensive. It wasn't just a debate. It was a public undoing. "This is a new low for The View," one viewer commented. "I've never seen Whoopi this rattled. She was spiraling." The rest of the panel tried to pivot the conversation, but Whoopi couldn't recover. Her voice was shaky, her words clumsy, and her usual fire had fizzled out. Gutfeld, meanwhile, remained cool as ice, casually sipping his coffee as though nothing dramatic had just happened. That only made it worse. The audience in the studio was dead silent, the kind of silence that screams louder than applause. Even longtime fans of the show seemed unsure of what to think. And then came the aftershock. News outlets picked up the story within hours, with headlines blasting across the internet. Whoopi shattered on air, and Gutfeld destroys Goldberg in live showdown. Commentators from both sides weighed in, some defending Whoopi's emotional response, others declaring it the beginning of the end for The View's credibility. "Whoopi's not used to being challenged," said one pundit. "She's used to applause, not opposition." The moment became symbolic of something bigger: the growing disconnect between celebrity talk shows and public perception.
Yesterday on The View, otherwise known as Hell's DMV, Whoopi Goldberg asked how much different are the values of the Trump administration from the Taliban.
We have a leader who has repeatedly demeaned women,
Right.
wants to defund organizations that benefit women, calling on the media to shut up, specifically wants to give preferential treatment based on religion.
And Whoopi, once untouchable, had just been exposed. Even fans of the show admitted it was hard to watch. "She looked like she was holding back tears," one fan confessed. "It didn't feel like debate. It felt like defeat." Meanwhile, Gutfeld returned to Fox News and addressed the moment with a grin. "I didn't plan to upset anyone," he joked. "I just brought a flashlight into a dark room." That comment alone sent another wave of reactions online. Some called him a hero, others accused him of being cruel. But no one could deny he had made an impact. On the next episode of The View, Whoopi returned with a forced smile and a noticeably tense tone. The usual laughter felt thin, like everyone was pretending nothing had happened. But the viewers hadn't forgotten. Ratings surged, not from admiration, but curiosity. Everyone wanted to see if she would snap again. Co-hosts walked on eggshells, careful not to reference the meltdown directly. But their nervous glances said it all. The atmosphere had changed. It wasn't just Whoopi's breakdown that had shaken the show. It was the realization that their bubble had been popped. The world was watching, and this time, not clapping. The show that once prided itself on bold voices had just been silenced, not by volume, but by the weight of truth, crashing through the studio walls. But Whoopi insisted on pushing through, determined to save face. She tried to steer the conversation toward a new topic, but her voice still wavered. Every word she spoke felt forced, like she was trying to hold together a crumbling image. The rest of the panel, normally loud and energized, barely spoke. It was as if they knew one wrong word could cause another on-air explosion. Gutfeld, meanwhile, had already left the studio, leaving behind a trail of stunned silence. He didn't need to stay. The wreckage spoke for itself.
No, let me explain. They said that their ovens had gone down, all kinds of stuff, but folks went and got them anyway, which is why I'm not telling you who made them. But can't be because I'm a woman, but perhaps they did not like my politics.
Some hosts defended her, but others took the opportunity to mock The View's unraveling live on air. She's been in the game for years. How is she still this thin-skinned? Asked one rival host during their broadcast. If you can't handle a challenge, why are you on a panel? Everywhere you turned, someone was talking about the clash. Radio shows, blogs, YouTube commentators, all zeroed in on the same clip that now defined Whoopi's week. Meanwhile, Gutfeld remained mostly quiet, letting the reaction speak for itself. His only response came in the form of a smirk during his nightly broadcast. "You don't need to yell when the truth already did the talking," he said with a wink, and the audience roared with laughter. Back on The View, Whoopi seemed determined to pretend everything was fine. But her energy was off, her smile strained, and her voice didn't carry the same power. Behind the scenes, producers were scrambling, not just to salvage the show, but to prevent another on-air breakdown. Tension had replaced confidence, and it showed. Audiences waited to see if Whoopi would finally address the blow-up directly. But instead of honesty, they got avoidance, carefully rehearsed lines, and vague references to tough conversations. The effort to gloss over the moment only made it worse. Viewers weren't interested in scripted smiles. They wanted accountability, or at least some authenticity. Every time Whoopi brought up a political issue, comments flooded in, saying, "What about last week? What about Gutfeld?" The internet didn't forget, and neither did the audience. The View tried to return to business as usual, but something was different. The once fiery debates now felt overly controlled, like everyone was afraid to poke the bear again. Whoopi's usual swagger was missing. Her timing was off, her confidence dulled. Even fans began questioning whether she had lost her spark. "She's not the same anymore," one longtime viewer noted. "It's like she's just going through the motions now." Other co-hosts stepped up, trying to fill the void, but the dynamic had already shifted. The entire cast seemed on edge, watching every word, every reaction. With the ratings roller coaster still climbing, producers were faced with a tough question: ride the scandal for views, or rebuild the show's integrity? Social media users weren't letting go either. Dozens of remixes, mock trailers, and fake movie posters circulated, all titled things like "The View, The Breakdown," and "Goldberg versus Gutfeld." Even late-night comedians jumped in on the frenzy. One compared the segment to a political cage match, where only one walked out standing. Meanwhile, Whoopi kept pretending to laugh through it all. But her laughter felt hollow, her eyes tired. The emotional weight hadn't gone anywhere. And then came another bombshell. An old clip of Whoopi resurfaced, showing her making similar controversial comments from years ago. The public began connecting the dots. Was this breakdown really just one moment, or part of a much larger pattern? Critics argued this wasn't just about Gutfeld. It was about the years of unchecked ego, unchallenged opinions, and the illusion of invincibility finally cracking. The View may have been built on conversation, but now it looked more like a monologue interrupted. And when that monologue was questioned, it collapsed. Whoopi tried to recover her rhythm in the following episodes, but the magic was gone. She was speaking, but few were listening the same way. Gutfeld had exposed more than just hypocrisy. He had pierced the heart of a show that once thrived on confidence, but now floated in uncertainty. And somewhere, in the quiet aftermath of the chaos, viewers were left wondering, was this just the beginning of the end?